Hey everyone, Warwick's here. With BfA basically in the rear view and everyone's eyes looking towards Shadowlands, I wanted to look at the journey of the classes as they had in BfA. This will hopefully help understand the baseline Blizzard is working from as they shift these still needed class updates to Shadowlands. Today we're going to look at the Death Knight, my main in Battle for Azeroth, and most likely my main in Shadowlands. This will look at all three specs and grade them on a tier scale from S tier to D tier. Because the specs have varying success in both Raid and Mythic Plus, I will grade each aspect of PvE individually, and then we'll average the grade. This is, of course, subjective in nature, but I'll do my best to respect the overall performance of each spec. This is based on general overall performance and not how the spec plays or anything else of that nature in terms of raw numbers. Let's start with the Blood Death Knight. Blood DK started Battle for Azeroth as the king of Mythic Plus tanking. If you wanted to succeed at high level keys, it was almost required to have a Blood DK. Every MDI team in Season 1 used a Blood DK as a tank. People called for nerfs, even Blood DK players themselves. In patch 8.1, Blizzard responded. They removed the armor bonus from Veteran of the Third War, the stamina bonus from the same passive was reduced to 5%, down from 10%. Woodland Acropolis was nerfed from 35 to 30%, and Bone Storm was capped to a 15% heal, down from basically uncapped. These nerfs had no compensating buffs, and this left Blood in a pretty rough position in M+ for the rest of the expansion. It wasn't until meme comps were run in the MDI by teams such as Method EU at the end of Season 3 did we see a Blood DK at that level again. Overall, Blood DK was the king that was overthrown by Prot Warrior and never recovered. The grade here, I'll give it a B. This is buoyed by Season 1, otherwise I think it would be lower. In the raid setting, Blood DK had a slow build to be a top tier tank in raid. Throughout Uldir, Battle for Dazar Lore, and Eternal Palace, Blood would find a niche as a grip bot on certain fights, with Mechatork in BOD as the most obvious example of where Death Grip and Gorfin's Grasp controlled the adds and lowered the difficulty of the fight. Outside of that though, Blood never found its way in as a regular tank at the highest levels, and was her third or fourth tank you would want to bring to a raid. This all changed in Nyalotha ever. Blood DK has a history of having great stat scaling, and that goes back really to Mist of Pandaria. This didn't change in Battle for Azeroth, and Blood DK became the most popular kid on the block. The only tank to consistently be able to push Brewmaster out of the tank rotation. Blood DK also had a great strength against magic damage, which was in high demand in Nyalotha. Complexity Limit had Blood DK as one of their tanks in their world first kill. I think most people would mark Blood DK high here, but I think that might be some recency bias. I'm going to give it a grade of a high B. Overall, grade is a B. Blood had its high points this expansion, and we're kind of middling outside of that. It was never seen or deemed unplayable in any PvE content though, so we'll just go with the average grade of B. Blood DK in Shadowlands has some positives going for it, and we'll have to see how it continues to play out numbers-wise as they continue to tune and tweak for the rest of the alpha and into the beta. Next up, Unholy DK. Let me start by saying Unholy is my favorite DPS spec in Battle for Azeroth. The playstyle is difficult but fun to learn. Unholy had one niche this expansion, AoE damage. Unholy has a unique way its AoE damage scales, as it does so in a quadratic manner. Wowhead has a post on it which will be linked below in the description because it explains it way better than I can. This really began to shine in Season 2 of BfA with the Mythic Plus affix Reaping. This brought huge AoE packs to the table which allowed Unholy to shine in ways that it had never done so even in Season 1. In Season 4 with Awakened, a double Unholy DK comp was common in MDI and deemed necessary by some team in order to win races. Unholy DKs have been a big part of Mythic Plus all expansion, and they shine brighter than any other DPS in this aspect of the game. Grade S tier. In Raid, however, the story was much different. Unholy was so powerful in AoE that its single target build felt lacking, and its damage kind of did the same. It struggled to find a place where demon hunters, rogues, and somewhat warriors dominated the melee spots throughout the expansion. If the fight allowed the DK to have a high uptime, Unholy could do average to above average damage on single target. However, those fights were limited in BfA through all 4 raids, and though this hurt the spec throughout the entire expansion. I'm going to give it an overall grade of a C, but it is a high C. For this one, it's tough to grade on average. I'm going to give the Mythic Plus weight a little bit more weight here. So I'm going to say the average grade for Unholy is an A. It's a low A, and a borderline B if you value raid higher. Unholy DK is in a great spot going forward into Shadowlands Mythic Plus, but I would like to see some single target buffs being done to the spec, whether it's through talents, legendaries, or soul conduits, that are going to allow it to be able to experience that same sort of success in a raid setting. And finally, the Frost DK. The Frost Death Knight has had an interesting journey in Battle for Azeroth. It has always been outshined by its Unholy counterpart in Mythic Plus. That said, I think Frost has been genuinely underrated as a DPS spec in Mythic Plus. It has a lot of passive AoE damage that allows the DK to push their focus into maximizing their cooldowns to pump out damage. The biggest issue with Frost DK in Mythic Plus is that Unholy exists. There's not much else to say other than I think Frost is undervalued because its DPS brethren in Unholy has outshined it so much. Grade B. In Raid, Frost has had a roller coaster of an expansion. In 8.0, it was the highest damage spec of all melee, and as its early mastery scaling was key to helping the spec shine in Uldir. However, Azerite changes in 8.1 were minimal, and other specs that got changes began to push by them. The fall was so great that it was near the bottom with Arms Warrior in Battle for Dazara lore for damage. After Breach Syndragosa was tweaked 100 times over, it felt like, the spec started to make a comeback. Frost started being a good third or fourth choice melee in patch 8.2, and were even more common in 8.3, as corruptions such as Masterful, Infinite Stars, and Gushing Wound helped Frost DK damage in a great way. Grade in Raid is an A, though barely. Overall grade here is going to be a B+, is the best way to put it. Frost has some perception issues as being simple, but its performance was overall very solid outside of patch 8.1. Frost will be the most interesting spec to follow in early Shadowlands, as we see how the dual wield versus two-handed debate plays out live once Shadowland drops. Overall, I think Death Knight has 3 fun playstyles moving into Shadowlands, and most of the changes for the class so far look promising. In Battle for Azeroth, I think the performance of the DK was always above average, with Unholy in Mythic Plus being the standout of the group. The biggest issue with DK is that other specs always seem to outshine them from a community perception or just a flat-out number standpoint. I'm excited about DK going into Shadowlands, though. Anyways, guys, that's the journey of DK and BfA. Let me know if there's anything I missed or why you think I'm wrong. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to this video. The footage for this was taken from my stream, which you can find at mixer.com/warix. The link is in the description below. Next up, we'll do Druid. Until then, everyone, I'll see you next time.